You give up. Keep moving on. Keep moving on. We gotta put one foot in front of the other, one foot.
So very good to virtually see all of you this morning. What you see behind me is your very own stained glass piece. It's not in my home. I'm not in my home. I've come to the sanctuary here because my internet is somewhat unstable. So I felt that it'd be better if I would be here so that I don't disappear during the sermon, but it is really good to see you all. I would like to start what I'm going to share with you today with an image that I think I need to explain. Many of you are Star Trek people, not everyone, but many of you know the series. This image comes from the Next Generation, that particular incarnation of Star Trek. And what you see is one of the crew members standing in what they call the holodeck, which is just a grid. And the grid is actually in a room, and you walk into the room and you ask the computer to run whatever program you want. So it's a fantasy world. It's an unreal world, and you can walk in there and interact with characters that play out dramas, have adventures, sit in a cafe in Paris, whatever fantasy world you want. I came across this little cartoon recently, and I just rolled over laughing because of what it said. And this says a lot about the year we're living through that isn't over yet. So it says 2020, at least once a day I walk outside and say, computer, end program, just in case, just in case. So that pretty much says it, at least to Star Trek folks, but now you all understand it. It's like we're living in a world created by some big holographic machine that creates a reality. This year has really had a quality of unreality to me, and I know to many of you. So it's really like we all walked into a computer game, and the computer has presented several strange and challenging situations for all of us this year. The pandemic we are living through feels, to me, in a way, like a science fiction nightmare. In fact, a few years ago, I actually read an apocalyptic novel in which most of the people on the planet lost their lives to a weird virus for which there was no vaccine or cure. Now we seem to be living out this particular plot, though so far, at least, the virus hasn't wiped out most of the population. But it has, as you know, killed many and sickened many more. It has put livelihoods and the economy in peril. And our lives haven't been the same since it began. On top of this, we in the West have been faced with some of the worst fires, actually the worst fires, most destructive fires that we have ever experienced. And these fires, as the experts say, have been intensified by climate change. They've burned millions of acres and many homes, and they have claimed some lives. Yesterday, for the third time this season, the city of Berkeley, where I live, has recommended that those of us who live in the hills consider evacuating our homes this afternoon, preemptively evacuating them because of high winds and extra dry air that's supposed to sweep through. I actually packed a bag last night, and I may not be going home after this service today. And of course, we've all breathed the smoke from these conflagrations. Perhaps you remember that one day, certainly where I live, it looked like this, and maybe here too, probably, because all over the Bay Area, the smoke in the air obstructed the sun, and there was a deep, dark orange sky that really, for the whole day, turned the day into night. It was very, very eerie. That day, it had a doomsday quality to it. And I see it as an emblem of the fear that these more and more common fires is engendering. This has also been, as you know, a year full of political tension and social upheaval and deep, deep division. We have seen increased racial tension as unarmed people of color continue to be killed, and protesters trying to awaken awareness have sometimes seen their peaceful demonstrations ruined by bad actors sowing violence and destruction. Our country seems even more painfully divided than I can remember in prior challenging times, even during the Vietnam era. I don't remember the divisions being quite as deep and pervasive over everything, even politicizing things like the pandemic, a virus that has no politics, but has been made to. It is like being in the holodeck. We are divided, and the upcoming election concerns us, not just because we're concerned about the outcome, but we're concerned that the election process might somehow be sabotaged. This has put many of us on edge. It is very, very scary to think that our democratic process itself is in jeopardy. Oddly enough, yesterday I came across an article about the first murder hornet nest. How about that? Murder hornets found in the US. Just yesterday, I think it was. Just the name murder hornets gives us pause, but it's like completing the picture of these plagues that have been visited upon us recently. So how do we cope with all of this? How can you deal with this and perhaps whatever else might be stressing you in your personal life? Well, I would like to share with you today some of the coping strategies that I have been using to keep from making myself literally sick with worry or boiling over with tension. We have to recognize that part of our anxiety comes from knowing that we can't completely control the outcome of many of the things we are facing. Take the coronavirus pandemic as an example. We can certainly control our own response to it and reduce our personal risk of contracting it. And you know all the ways we can do that. But the virus is still out there, spreading now in record amounts, leaving many of us isolated from others or unable to enjoy the travel and the precious human gatherings we once took for granted, like coming here to worship. And we can't help but worry about the vulnerability of those we love and those we don't know but still care about. The future course of this pandemic is unknown. When will this intense phase of it end? How well will vaccines, when they are available, work? Will the virus always be with us in some form, even with vaccines? There is so much we don't know. And here in the West, of course, there are the fires. Must we just come to accept that with climate change, devastating fires are now the new normal for us every single year? And what about that election? Now just 9 days away. Even if the outcome is what we want, will there be those who try to undermine the results? Will there be violent reactions? Learning to live with all this uncertainty is very challenging. Even in more normal times, living with uncertainty and without a sense of control over much of what happens is a fundamental aspect of the human condition. We Unitarian Universalists know this philosophically. We tend to be more comfortable with life's uncertainties than those who demand answers, who tend to reassure themselves that God will take care of everything. Deep down, even those who do have this kind of faith, I believe, are not always so sure. Uncertainty is our baseline as human beings. I have learned a lot over the years from those I have known who have wrestled with serious or terminal illnesses. Those who are seriously ill often seem to be acutely aware of uncertainty and have come to terms with their ultimate lack of control, at least more than the rest of us. Years ago, a dear ministerial colleague of mine was struggling with a virulent form of cancer, and his future was very uncertain. I remember him saying that his cancer inflicted him with, as he called it, an acute case of life. He was intensely aware of life's perplexing uncertainties and dichotomies, the need to act, to do what he could to help himself, and the need to let go of the outcome, the need for support, and the need for alone time, the moments of sadness and even rage, and the intense joy and gratitude for life that comes to those who have to look so closely at death. The coronavirus, which has struck down not only the elderly and infirm, but even younger and healthy folks, has actually inflicted all of us with an acute case of life. It has made many of us more aware of our own vulnerability, our own helplessness in some ways, and our mortality. Accepting this reality and acknowledging all these unknowns, I believe, is a road to a healthier existence in these difficult times. One of my coping mechanisms for dealing with stress may sound strange, but it's a method sometimes used by therapists working with people who are experiencing loss, trauma, stress, and anxiety. It involves setting aside time to just let yourself worry or grieve, to feel deeply what you feel for a very specified time. Without some time to let the feelings just come and face them squarely, you may instead find that they creep into your awareness all day long and even into your dreams, creating an omnipresent sense of dread that colors all you do. Psychotherapist Amy Morin wrote about her method of practicing this discipline. She writes, "Set aside 15 minutes each day to worry. Mark it on your calendar or add it to your schedule. Make it consistent if you can. Whenever you catch yourself worrying outside of your time frame, remind yourself it's not time to worry and that you'll have plenty of time to think about these worries during your scheduled time. Once you arrive at your worry time, then worry all you want. Sit and think about all the worries that are outside of your control." She continues, "Then, after 15 minutes have passed, tell yourself it's time to get back to your everyday life. Get up and go about your usual business." With consistent practice, research shows you'll contain your worries to just 15 minutes a day. That's a big improvement, she says, if you're used to worrying 24/7. So that's her advice. And in effect, this is what I have been doing about my worries over the upcoming election. Worries I know many of you share with me. Concerns not only about who will win, but also about whether our voting process will be somehow undermined. Maybe ultimately taking the vote out of the hands of the people. So I allow myself to check the poll numbers once a day, and at that time I also let myself obsess about the things that can go wrong with the election and its aftermath. I also do this with the virus worries. At first, I found myself reading or listening to news reports about it many times a day as a fuller picture of how dangerous it is was emerging. Eventually, though, I realized how much I was being affected by all the information I was devouring, and I turned off the news overload, except for a morning check on the statistics and some of the latest articles. Related to the technique of confining the time we allow ourselves to worry, there is also the old reliable method of sheer escapism. In reasonable doses, I believe escaping is a healthy pursuit. Indulging in whatever forms of entertainment, physical activity, humor, hobbies, or creative expression you enjoy can restore a sense of balance when things seem so chaotic and so out of balance. For me, humor is one thing that is a great healing balm. My son, sensing I needed this during the summer, sent me copies of my favorite Monty Python movies to enjoy again and again. Related to escapism, but not exactly the same, is self and spiritual care. This may involve meditation, journaling, virtually going to church, walking safely in nature. In short, going to the well, doing for ourselves whatever we know inspires and renews and refreshes us. One of the ways I do this is by concentrating on a poem a day. I am actually on a poem a day list from the American Academy of Poets. And even though most of the poems I am reading are actually socially relevant and involve wrestling with issues like the virus or social injustice, I find that just appreciating the art, the craft of the poetry on whatever topic is healing and renewing for me. A wonderful way to help yourself rise above your concerns in difficult times is to turn outward to help others. There is a lot about the challenges we are facing that we can't control, but we all can do something. Even small efforts are both helpful to others and therapeutic for ourselves. Sewing face masks for others, making phone calls to get out the vote, donating to help fire victims, or to community food banks that help those who have lost jobs, or to political organizations and social justice causes. These efforts keep hope alive. And these little acts of kindness are necessary to counter the rhetoric of hatred and division we hear too much of these days. As historian Howard Zinn wrote, "To be hopeful in bad times is not foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act and at least the possibility of sending the spinning top of a world in a different direction. To live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory. Another helpful discipline for facing hard times is to cultivate a sense of gratitude for those things in your life that you can celebrate. It is so easy to become discouraged, to become cynical and cranky. There's an old story about the importance of gratitude. A mortal man somehow stumbles upon Satan in the barn where Satan stores his seeds of sin and negativity, seeds that he sows in the human heart. So this man is looking over all these piles of seeds in this barn, and he notices that the most numerous among them by far, the towering pile of seeds, are the seeds labeled discouragement. So he asks Satan to explain why there are so many of this particular seed. And Satan boasts, I have so many of these because I can sprout seeds of discouragement anywhere. All people are prone to feel discouraged. Anywhere? Asks the man. Then Satan boasts some more. Sure, anywhere. But when Satan is further pressed, he finally and sadly admits that there is one place where the seeds of discouragement will not grow. They will never germinate in the heart of a truly grateful person. Amid all of the hardship and tension that characterizes these days, I would say, don't let all of that discourage you and totally eclipse the blessings and the gifts of life that you are grateful for. Thinking about these blessings daily is certainly helpful to me. In addition to setting aside worry time, indulging in escapism, taking care of our spirits, engaging in social activism, and cultivating a sense of gratitude, something else that helps me is my quirky practice of taking the very long view, keeping in mind the fact that this too shall pass, whatever it is. The virus, even if it never entirely goes away, may be diminished in contagion and in danger by vaccines and better treatments. The election will soon be over, and if it doesn't go the way you hoped, though that may seem disastrous, and perhaps is, there will be other opportunities for future elections to better express and support your values. The fires and other planetary disasters, well, these are harder to feel optimistic about in the long view. But danger to the planet could lessen if we continue to work in whatever small ways we can to mitigate climate change, while scientists puzzle out new technologies and world leaders work out international agreements that can make a difference. And of course, the ongoing challenges of racial inequality, hatred, and division, these we must continue to stand against. But I truly believe that some future generation will look back on these days and wonder at how people could once have had such irrational, ancient prejudices. Perhaps you have tried some of the methods I've mentioned today and other ways to help you cope with such times as these, when several big challenges have bunched together and stolen our collective sense of equilibrium. I am coping, and I hope you are coping too. But even with our good efforts to manage it all, this year still seems so unreal somehow, like a weird, bad dream. So each day, I confess, I am tempted to just go outside and say, with hope, computer, end program.